All right, everyone. Thanks for coming to this salon about how we create safety for our clients. I know this is a hot topic with many of us who value creating safety for our own clients, and some of us that have seen the shenanigans out there in the marketplace. And so what I wanted to do today, share a little bit about what I've learned about creating safety, just to kind of structure the conversation. But we have a wealth of experience here. And actually, what I really want to do is hear from all of us and kind of construct a shared group understanding of what is safety, what is psychological safety, how do we create it for our clients? And also let's talk a little bit, if we have time, about how we create it for ourselves in the coaching containers that we're a part of. And so my intention is I'm going to put this on YouTube after we're done, and I'm hoping it's something that will live evergreen as a resource for people beyond our conversation here today. All right, so let's get into it. Just sharing a couple thoughts. Our clients have a right to a safe space to do their vulnerable work. Honestly, I'm not sure how this is even up for discussion or debate. This to me is fundamental. It is the bedrock of what we do as coaches. I think it's worth talking about what is psychological safety and what it maybe isn't, but creating a space where people can be vulnerable and explore whatever's going on for them, whatever programs or services that we have to offer them in a space that allows for them to unfurl. So let's talk about what psychological safety is and what it isn't. And again, each slide, these are just my thoughts. It's not like the comprehensive annotated list of everything that creates psychological safety. It's really just the conversation starter. So for those of you that have worked with me or familiar with my work, I'm a big, huge Parker Palmer fan. And he, in one of his books, he talks about the space where the soul feels safe to emerge. And that's where the transformational work is done. And so I feel like that for me is kind of the centerpiece of my approach to working with clients is, can I create a space where their souls feel safe to emerge? Just off the top of my head earlier today, to me, some of the key components of that are that creating psychological safety are that clients are free to ask questions and share their concerns. The coach is humble and open to feedback, and they don't set themselves up as the guru or someone who's beyond reproach. Clients are treated with respect and feel that their perspective has value. Also, I think it's important to have guidelines and structures for groups and individuals that are well thought out and clear so that everyone knows what's expected and how to participate. So just as a jumping off point, what else comes up for you? What's important for you? How do you create psychological safety for your clients? Steph?
Well, I'm just going to fumble through it because I think there's a lot of ways in which we do it and people are unique, but making sure that people feel seen and heard and respected, and acknowledging that even though that it like the power dynamic in a way, or the power imbalance that some people may experience or may in the space that is there, and that people have trauma around that coming into experiences that we may not even know anything about. So that if we don't acknowledge or something, or we engage poorly, we could be doing real damage. And I know that's probably anyhow, it's kind of a potpourri, I think, of a lot of this, but it gets me fired up. I get so pissed.
Well, I think there's a lot of elements there that are really important. I do think too, it's important to recognize that there is a power imbalance. And so as a coach, what I do to address that is I'm constantly seeking to hand power back to my clients. The other thing that I think is related to that is I've heard a couple coaches taking credit for clients' results. Like, I got the client these results. No, the client gets their own results, right? We support, we empower, And that's a way to be really clear about that. And when the client wants to hand it to you and say, oh, you did this and you did that, to seek to hand it back to them and remind them that they are doing this. They have the power. They're the ones that are creating the change in their lives or doing whatever it is that they're there to do. Yeah, I think being explicit, and also that it's your job as the coach to create the container. To me, I want to be a servant among equals, and I have that in here somewhere, but I'm creating the container. So I am responsible. That I have that power, and I need to understand that and use that wisely and not abdicate my responsibilities as the person who is hosting the party or creating the experience for the client. So I think those are great points. Anything else to add here?
Since I mostly serve physicians, I have languaging on my website and also that I discuss with the clients about. It's the same level of confidentiality you'd have with your patients.
Yeah, confidentiality, super, super, super important. Anything else here? Yeah.
When you learn how to make proposals to prospective clients and stuff, a big thing that I was taught is never talk about your pricing, never talk. And I'm just like, screw all of that.
Yeah.
I do my very best to give prospective clients all the information about how I structure my sessions and my pricing. And I also invite their feedback about that, really encourage them but to tell me what they think, because I'm always willing to work with clients. So I think it's really helpful for me as a client to know what I'm getting into. I don't want to be in an enrollment conversation where I invest like 40 minutes of my time and then all of a sudden this huge price drop comes and then get pressure. So I think even just how we structure things before we ever work with a client one-on-one.
Such a great point. And transparency.
Mhm.
Transparency. How is the lead up to working with you? Like there's also a way of thinking out there that you want to get your client to sign up right then, because if they go and think about it, they're not going to sign up. And I would say, if you're not willing to let your client go think about it, then maybe you need to improve your offering. Maybe you need to stand a little stronger in what you stand for, because I don't want to pressure somebody. It's easy, right? Because we're talking about power.
Mm-hmm.
People are coming to us for help. They're in a vulnerable place. And that point where they're ripe for manipulation. And so a coach can get them to decide at that time. They can say, if you have to go talk to a loved one or a spouse or a partner about this, that means you're not empowered. That means you don't have control of your life. And I just don't know how much more strongly I can state that is just bullshit and it's not right. I don't think it's ethical.
It's almost like a used car sales model feels, but it's a soul, it's a psyche, it's a human being, and yet it's like, bait and switch, or let's get you in here, and it feels.
What's it going to take to get you into that car today, honey?
Yeah, honey. I know. We've never had that happen.
Yeah.
And I work in psychedelic facilitation, so I've just always assumed, like, you've just got to be. It's the ultimate psychological safety setting, and so I always say that I like to take out the mystery where I can and answer all the questions that I can, and then let you lean into the mystery where you're supposed to lean into the mystery, and have your own experience, because it comes from you. I'm not this guru or this person or this plant isn't being implanted in you, and it's going to give you a story that changes everything. It unlocks your knowing. And so I just feel like, and how can that not go to being in the kind of the bleachers, cheering somebody on for the best possible outcomes? I'm getting somebody fired up back there. Sorry.
And we'll keep this conversation going. This is just kind of the beginning definition of what is psychological safety here. Have we missed anything at this highest level? And then we'll kind of delve down deeper. Renee.
Well, I have something on the all my sales pages that says like the pricing is completely transparent because I run an ethical anti-capitalist coaching business, but I also say on every single sales page, like, this is not for you if you are this. And also, if you are feeling any FOMO, pressure, manipulation, anything like that, please do not sign up for this. Which the last part is borrowed from Randy Buckley, so I'm going to give credit where credit's due. But like at the very end, right at the bottom, I'm like, if you believe these things, or you think this, then this is not the program for you. Don't sign up to it.
Yeah.
And that's crystal clear.
I love that.
People need to do that.
I love that. So now we're talking about what we do before folks come in. Or one thing I put on my sales page is I'm very clear. Like if I'm doing a retreat or something and I am putting out my own financial obligation, then yes, I have to have cancellation policies. I have to have certain timing where people are getting refunds and stuff. But I try to just be really transparent about that. It's like, hey, I'm paying for this thing, so this is when I need everything by. Here's what I can do for you. And then here's very clear information about just if you want to cancel, you have to do by X date. But if I'm selling like a self-study course or something that has a lot of people and I'm not putting cash out, then I offer people, I guarantee my work. If you buy this course and you don't like it, if you don't feel that it is well put together, I'd like for people to think about if they just didn't use it, to take some personal responsibility. But if they bought it and it was like, this wasn't what I thought based on what you said, or I didn't feel like it was well put together, I'm going to give them their money back. If somebody coaches with me and it's not going well, I'm going to give them their money back. I'm not about keeping anybody's money for services that haven't been delivered. So I love that, just letting people know, who is this for? So transparency, because that absolutely creates a sense of safety for people, right? They know, Renee, you're building this beautiful trust with people. They know that that's the way to start to let them know that if they start to have those feelings, that's something they can either get support if it's just coming up in them, but they're going to feel safer to bring that to you and discuss that with you, and you can help them resolve it, whether it's something that you need to change or do, or it's just helping them resolve something in themselves. Yeah. Anything else on this? We can talk about what psychological safety is not.
I have one more
Go ahead.
thing on the safety when it comes to groups, like the guidelines and the structures for groups. I think there needs to be attention really paid to, because in groups, like the coaches sometimes use their own experiences of things to discuss, right? It's like, so when I was feeling like this or whatever, and I was in a workshop on the weekend that was primarily women, and the topics that the facilitator used wasn't safe topics. One was pregnancy and one was intentional weight loss.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, and what that was making me think of is being aware. What I failed to include here was being aware of biases and being aware of potential triggers.
Yeah, I mean, if your participants are using that as things that they're working through, that's one thing. But as a facilitator, to be in a room full of women or women identified femmes and to use pregnancy, I think is really, really not a safe thing. And also intentional weight loss is not a safe thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because both instances, I was like, are we doing this? Like, that's not a safe space for people.
Yeah, I think so. It's worth
that in groups anyways.
Yeah, I think it's worth always examining your own biases and where you're coming from, and making sure you're being inclusive. And like you said, find another story that's a little less charged.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move into what psychological safety is not. Oh. We have a running joke. This is our dog, Mr. Beverly Wiggins, and he can be a little nervous guy sometimes. And so this is the quote we always have him go, "It's not safe." All right. So psychological safety isn't, again, not an exhaustive list. So let's do what we can to flesh this out. So when I'm talking about psychological safety, I am not talking about protecting your clients or yourself from having strong feelings. Is going to happen. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Lisa, I borrowed some of your language here because I thought it was such a great way to say this, but psychological safety is not, there's no reason you don't. I was trained when I first became a coach, it was the whole thing was in the first 10 minutes with your client, you can have an impact, and you get in there and you get the thought and you create a shift and you show your client how great of coach you are. And in the ensuing 15 years of my own learning and my own healing, there is no reason to come at your clients like that and try to create a shift before they're ready. And if you're observing something and it's making you want to go in there and get it and work with it before the client's ready, that's a place to really come back to yourself and look at your ego and give your clients more time and space for their own unfolding and to come to their own truth in their own way. Next is the leader setting themselves up as the ultimate authority. So we're talking about that power piece. And sadly, we see this in the industry, people setting themselves up as these ultimate authorities who are immune from mistakes and feedback. If you're ever part of a community or a group where clients and participants are being berated, teased, embarrassed, or abused in any way, that is just a hard no. And that can take a lot of different forms.
Yeah.
So it's really
Also
being,
like in absentia. So the client's not here, but we're telling an embarrassing story or putting down how they responded to whatever.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And so if you're hearing any of that or you're privy to any of that, chances are it's happening about you too, right? And it's happening about other people. And so that's just not a great scene to be a part of. I know as a coach, I did this earlier on, but these are places where I gave up my integrity and I overlooked things and I minimized things so that I could continue to belong. So if you're part of situations that aren't psychologically safe and you're not really able to affect change, then I think it's really time to start thinking about how much you really want to be a part of these communities and what's driving that. And then gaslighting. And the classic coach gaslight is, it's just your thoughts. The client brings up an issue and the coach says some version of, it's just your thoughts, or if you really did the work, you wouldn't be having that reaction or whatever. And that ain't it. That is not psychological safety, and it's not okay. So those were my off the top of my head thoughts. What else do we have here? Like, go ahead. Yes, Jen.
So on the topic of gaslighting, there are the examples that you gave that we see pretty frequently, but my concern is of the subtler kind, right?
Okay.
Where it is maybe difficult for me to identify that that's the thing I'm doing. Or not intentionally.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes we say things and maybe it's the way that it's taken. Maybe it's the way that I said it. Maybe their experience is then reflected in a way that I didn't expect. And I never want to find myself in the position of disregarding the words that's coming up, but not honoring someone's situation. Right. And I'm a little freaked out about it.
Well, I think that's such a great point that you raise, and it's a place where I think we can make a subtler distinction. And I would peel off gaslighting and define it as like intentionally deceiving somebody, intentionally sort of putting it back to them because we don't want to look at ourselves. Now, I think what you're talking about, and I love that you're being so conscientious, but to me, this is the place where this isn't about being perfect, right? Sometimes you're going to throw out a hunch, or sometimes you're going to make an inference or a conclusion that just isn't it. And it may trigger somebody. And that's okay. That's going to happen. That's why we have to create this safe container, so that when something like that happens, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but how do we respond to that? How do we repair? And so there are going to be these moments where we don't do everything exactly right. And it's, what do we do after that? That's so important.
Okay.
And we'll get to that.
Okay, yes.
Yeah,
the after
because
that,
and
I'm
that's
gonna
the other
make
thing.
mistakes.
Yes, you're going to make mistakes all the time. And I think it's about, and that's where I think I really do want to drive this point home, because I do think conscientious coaches can get so fearful of making mistakes or harming somebody that they hold themselves back. And so the other intention of talking about this and talking about it at length is to hopefully help you feel more comfortable being in the arena with a client or with a group, and doing your magic and being willing to make mistakes, because that you're going to make it right if you step in it.
Yeah.
Oh, Renee, you're muted.
I said, at the end of the day, gaslighting is it at its core is dismissing somebody's lived experience, right? So when somebody says, this is how I felt and this is what happened, and you say, no, that's not it, that's you gaslighting them.
Yeah.
And I mean, a good coach isn't going to do that. You're not going to say to your client, that's not your lived experience. You're going to say, tell me more about that experience, right? So, and then listen to whatever they're saying between the lines. And
yeah,
but yeah, you're not going to dismiss their lived experience. That's what gaslighting is. It's like, and our society is full of it. Right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that didn't happen that way. You need
It's like,
to think
no, it's
about
on
it
video, but it
differently.
didn't happen. Like, it's like, wait, what?
You're right. I think that happened.
I think it was
Well,
on video. I think it happened.
It's like improv. So if somebody is telling you their truth and the way they understand it, then your response is some version of yes and, like Renee was saying, and just rolling with it. It's fascinating actually to watch the way some people make meaning of the events that happen to them, and to realize that there's no one way to make meaning or to understand what happened to somebody. Somebody might speak very metaphorically about something that happened. Somebody may speak very clinically about what happened. And all of those ways of speaking about their experience are valid.
Yeah, and if they believe something, they're going to find the evidence to support it. So their retelling of things is entirely how they experienced it.
I would add
Right.
not using
ahead, Steph.
not using things you shared in sessions as part of your healing against you, not attacking you with those things or using them in a manipulative fashion. It's not obviously psychological safety, but just another aspect of that. And it kind of goes to gaslighting. That is, I had a well-known teacher, when I said that I had ADHD, tell me that I did not, because it was not like hers. And
what?
Yeah, we'll just say,
yeah, like that is
it's but it sent me into a spin, because then you're telling the teacher, this respected teacher is telling me that I'm not who I've been diagnosed as, like what, and it took me a long time to be able to come to terms with that identity and be okay with it, because I was shamed growing up by it. So to be in this space where I'm like coming to terms with who I am, and to be told, no, you're not, is dreadful. It just goes back to that. It's so damaging.
So damaging.
I think that I'm hesitant to say this because it feels like an overgeneralization, but I know you'll all take it. You know, there's like some coach trainings have almost a combative, edge to them where it's like playing tennis or something. The client lobs a ball at you, you whack it back as fast as you can. I noticed that a lot when I was training coaches, and I noticed that when I was coaching, when I first started out, like the pressure to constantly have a response, to like keep the client fixed in, I could be wrong about that. Over the years, I'm just like, especially after having coaches of my own, present company excluded, but who did that to me, and how I didn't feel like there was anywhere for me to go. And I also realized that was the point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it did not feel good. And it didn't feel safe. And it honestly wasn't helpful. It was like, okay, I surrender. You got me.
I think that the coaching industry over the last decade has really created an environment of dissatisfaction over satisfaction, and an environment of like, you are getting your satisfaction from your dissatisfaction, and that lobbying back at them and keeping people constantly like that, I think, is a big part of it.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
So what I'm hearing you both say is significant component of safety means creating lots and lots of space.
Yes.
So the
Yeah.
client can move here and move there and move anywhere they want. And there's no falling over a cliff or running into a wall. It's just lots of space for them to explore.
I used to do an intake form with clients, like when I first started, like 12 or so years ago, and I don't do that anymore because I found that clients will tell me what they think I want to hear, right? Or what they think society is telling them is wrong with them, instead of like what is actually going on with them.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of
really
like very
interesting.
leading for them, and they ever put on an intake form, we never ended up talking about anyways.
I know, it's interesting. It's like, I just view that as a very small snapshot of where somebody is in time. But I think, Victoria, this point about space that's such an interesting way to say it, because I feel like my job is not necessarily, it's like, if my client is feeling constricted, my job is to create more space for them, help them create space so they can keep exploring. And I think what goes part and parcel with that is trust. Trust that they will come to their truth over time. So if they're relating something and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's a story, or whatever you're thinking, I mean, I would just encourage you to step away from that and trust that if you keep creating space and you keep working with your client and acting as their compassionate witness and their support, that they're going to land on a truth that works for them, that moves them forward. I love, Renee, what you're talking about, it in a positive way. Yeah.
And you'll feel it. Like, I always feel it when they get it. It's like palpable.
Yeah. And it's so fun when it happens that way, because you don't have to, I mean, we all work through these things in a spiral, but when something lets go from that more organic place, you don't have to keep doing thought work sentences over and over and over and over again. Something more fundamental has freed up, and that's the best. Okay, so thank you. I'm loving this conversation. So when we were talking about earlier, Jen, safety doesn't mean always doing it right, but it is how you respond when something goes wrong. How to respond how do we create psychological safety? Sorry, I think I do have a piece in here about how do we respond when things go awry. So these were and we've already talked about some of these words, right? Humility. For me, this is my number one, because I definitely stepped into some arrogance earlier in my career, and cultivating humility was not easy, but it was necessary and profound. And so I think of it as being a leader among equals. Your clients are not below you. Your clients are not people that are viewing themselves as above these. These are people, this is your community. You should, hopefully, the people that are showing up in your world, hopefully you love them. Hopefully you really enjoy engaging with them, and they're interesting and brilliant and multifaceted and fascinating and smart and funny and joyful and soulful. And if that's not happening, then that's a really good place to think about what's going on inside you and who you're drawing to you. And we're talking about all of this is like checking your ego and doing your work, but also being compassionate towards yourself. So Jen, kind of to your point, if you do mess up, do the work, talk to a mentor, coach, talk to somebody else, get it sorted out, but from this place of self-compassion that we're just humans humaning too. And it's not about perfection. Take care of your triggers. So if a client triggers you, step back, take care of that trigger, and see what they're saying from your client's perspective. How might they be right? Even if in a moment it's because, look, the feedback doesn't always go down smoothly. Like, I'm a sensitive soul. I just had like a little fall apart moment yesterday, and we're human, and some of that never goes away. There's a lot of feedback that I'm a lot better about receiving, but sometimes it just lands hard, and that's okay. But take a step back and take care of your triggers before you come back to the client. And you can say, what, I need to take a step back. Let's put a pin in this. I'm going to come back to you tomorrow. We're going to set up a time to talk. I need to take care of myself. And that's actually beginning. So if something has happened where you and your client have fallen out, that's the beginning of repair, because you're demonstrating integrity and humility. And let me go take care of myself before we try to resolve this. Integrity is a huge piece. The thing that really pushes my buttons is when leaders and coaches don't admit when they're triggered. They don't admit when they don't know. They don't admit when they make a mistake. It makes me nuts. And it's so easy to do. It's so easy to say, I messed up. I'm so sorry about that. And it does wonders for people to hear that. And then we talked about, don't tell them it's just their thoughts and they're sharing. I put legitimate concern in here, but I would actually S that out and just say, when they're sharing a concern, let's receive it. Let's explore it. Let's talk about it. It doesn't mean, and I think also separating from who's right and who's wrong in this. Oh, did I do something wrong? Did they do something wrong? Let's look at this more as something is coming up in this work. Something is coming up for them, and maybe something's coming up for me. And so let's start the process of sorting all that out and coming to understanding. And then you can see, is there something you need to do different? Is there something that you can do to support this client? It's not about right and wrong, good and bad. It's about this process that you're going through together. I had some more. Let me go to this other slide and then we'll open it up. Oops, hold on. Oops. So just to continue, professionalism and skillfulness. So for me, I'm pretty laid back and fun in my containers, I hope, but I really take my job as a facilitator and a space holder seriously. So it's like creating the container with all seriousness so that you can have fun, so that people can relax, and so it can be joyful, and people can feel safe to be themselves in that experience. And that takes a certain level of skill and a certain level of professionalism. Kindness. There's nothing in coaching that justifies being unkind. Nothing. Curiosity. I think it's when things are coming up, it's really helpful to stay curious. What's going on here? What's coming up? Maybe depersonalize it. The reason you want to handle your triggers is so you can depersonalize and stay curious and ask the questions and get to the heart of the matter and not make it about you. Go take care of the part that's about you. Go get your coach, go get your friend, go get your mentor that's going to put you back together so that you can come back and handle this situation in a professional, grounded, safe way. All right, now I'm going to throw it open. What you got on creating safety? What do you want to add?
I do think I think it's important for us as coaches to know where, I mean, you've already said this, like where our explicit and implicit biases are. And also, like, it is okay for coaches to have boundaries on
Yes.
what they can handle. Like, I think when I was and all that, I think a lot of people can get the idea that we have to be like neutral, so to speak on everything. And I know I felt that way. And for a long time, it was just like no problem until one client came to me with stuff that totally triggered me. I mean, and it was the dumbest thing. It was about what to do with their dog because they didn't want to keep the dog anymore.
Well, I don't know that that's the dumbest thing.
Well,
Not dumb.
it's just like it was, I don't mean it was
It's
dumb. It
hard.
didn't feel dumb to me, but it was like, and I finally, like, with great shame at the time, had to admit that, like, this is not one coaching topic that I feel like I can be a neutral sounding board. Like, I have so many feelings. Like, I hope I said it without judgment for the client. But I just think it's really important for us to know that we get to also create safety for ourselves.
I think that's an excellent point. And boundaries, and also what you were saying made me think of working outside your pay grade. And I see a lot of coaches doing this where they're moving into trauma work or therapy work or stuff that they are not trained for. And it's really knowing, like, or even just a new coach. And it's like maybe 3 coaching tools, or it's like, I know how to do this. When somebody comes with something that when you are a coach that has 5 or 10 years of experience, you may feel like you can handle it. You may find that you can handle it no problem, but just to say, wow, that I don't really feel like I can support you in the way that you need to be supported with this issue. Let me suggest a more experienced coach, another therapist. Let's find a trauma therapist. I send clients to therapy, EMDR, whatever it is, energy healing, just things that are beyond my scope. And so I think understanding that coaching, being a coach, does not come with this limitless scope, and to understand where that is within the confines of your training. And then, Lisa, what you said so beautifully, also within the confines of your own lived experience and your own trauma and things that are just difficult for you. I think that's a great addition. Anybody else?
I think with the telling a client it's just your thoughts, or these are just your limiting beliefs, especially in the realm of like women's empowerment coaching, that if you don't sort of address the issues of like systemic oppression and the patriarchy and internalized misogyny in those conversations, that you're doing a real disservice to your clients.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a lot of that out there of like, oh, you just need to change the way you're thinking. And it's like, yeah, well, we also need to recognize what's possible for ourselves inside those systems. Right? So without addressing systems of all kinds of things, you're kind of setting your clients up to fail, I think. And that's just like, I don't do professional coaching or anything like that, because I'm clearly not a professional, but I think like in one-on-one coaching, please, you've seen how I dress. So yeah, I think in those such situations that it's really important to, because I see that all the time. Somebody saying like, I just can't figure this out. I just can't figure this out. And they're looking at like an Instagram filtered existence of a coach saying, you can have my life. So
can we point to the context that the client is existing in that they don't see, they don't yet see, like shining the light. In my work, I talk about that as step as well. We say you came by it honestly. So can you see how your response or reaction to the world here and now today is the sum total of your lived experience and all this shit that's been pressing down on you? And just helping people see that larger context, because it's just the air they breathe and the water they swim in. They don't necessarily see that. So shining a light on that larger context can feel so powerful. And again, you don't have to tell them it's just their thoughts, and it's not just their
It's
thoughts.
just your thoughts.
It is not just your thoughts.
Yeah,
We are mind, body, heart, and spirit, and all of those pieces have to be seen and attended to, or at least acknowledged and understood that they're all there. And then add, I would say, the context in which we exist. Yeah. Anything else here?
I just not funneling people towards my version of happiness, or not being funneled to in kind of a formula of, or wholeness, what their version of happiness might look like, or what my version of happiness or wholeness. That's not a one size fits all world. But I feel like sometimes there's coaches or people that kind of push you in that direction because that's their version of happiness, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I think that's not the authenticity that is required.
Well, and I think that's why we have to all continue to do our own work, to take it, for me to work on my perfectionism and my striving and my desire to fit in, and my workaholism and the way my control issues, so that I can help create more space for my clients to find out who they are in the way that works for them. And it's kind of like, that's part of the container we provide. Is it's not that our clients are dependent on us, but if you think of us as creating the container, well, we can only create as vast of a container as the work that we ourselves have done.
And
So
I
that's-
also,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I also think it's important to, as far as creating safe spaces, is to allow our peers to call us into, right? And say that there are things that are happening here that, or this is what I'm witnessing. And like, I just, like, that's how you and I met, Bridget, right? Like,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's really important, because I mean, I've had my ass handed to me in a multitude of ways as a coach, sometimes very kindly, sometimes very unkindly, but the willingness to say, okay, I need to see this from your perspective, because we are lost in our own bias, right? In our own belief systems and our own unconscious things. So that I'd like to see as far as creating safe spaces.
Yeah. I think outstanding point. Here were my thoughts about when things go awry. And actually, this first point, I just had a few months ago, I just had a client, I had a new client. The session went completely sideways, and I did not follow my own guidance, which was bullet number 1. I didn't stop and talk about what's coming up. I just kept forging ahead with the session and like trying to figure out what was going on and get aligned. But the way to figure out what's going on and to get aligned is to stop and to talk about what's coming up. So what I should have done is say, like, hey, let's take a break here. It seems like we're not aligned here, and we're really speaking different languages. Like, what do you think's going on? And what do I think's going on? And see if we can't get on the same page. And then if we can't get on the same page, that's okay too. But I failed to have the explicit conversation about it. And I felt really bad because she left feeling pretty frustrated. And I did what repair that I could, but that was the biggest note that I gave to myself about that was, wow, I needed to just stop and talk about what's going on. And it doesn't even have to be that. It's like, it doesn't have to be to that degree. If you just feel confused, or you're not sure the client is having the experience they want to have, or is focused where they want to be focused, just stop and check in and say, I know in your pre-work, or I know at the top of the session, you said you wanted to do this, but we're talking about this. And so I just want to make sure that that things are going the way that you want them to go. So again, it's this transparency and giving them the opportunity to give you feedback in real time about what's going on. And so I would say that's critical. We've talked about gaslighting and power. Here's another thing that I hear people doing, and that I've done myself, is don't pathologize your clients. Just because someone's stuff is coming up and they're pushing back on you does not necessarily make them a narcissist or borderline personality disorder or whatever you're going to decide. Doesn't mean they're not, but don't, that's kind of beside the point. What's happening right now is you are creating an experience. Perhaps you're doing some deep work and something is coming up for the client and they're pushing back on you. And it's easy to diagnose them or point the finger at them. And it's better to sit with why you feel like you need to do that. And again, come back or do that real-time self-check and just stay curious about their experience. Because a lot of times, I think of it retreats and stuff. A lot of times when I do retreats, people's stuff comes up. It can be about like not belonging, or they're doing certain activities that just bring up their patterns. And so there's a real opportunity there to help them heal and move forward if you can stay their supportive partner and stay in the role of their coach and stay curious about their experience. And if there is something that you need to own in that, that can also be hugely supportive of their healing, because maybe they had parents or maybe they had people in their lives that never acknowledged any fault or never acknowledged that anything went wrong. So you saying like, hey, I could have been more thoughtful, or I'm really sorry that that happened, can be profoundly healing. So stay with folks.
So Bridget, I don't know where this fits in, but I have seen and heard the idea that in a session, the client gets exactly what they need. It's like everything happens for a reason. Everybody gets what they're supposed to get. The idea that nothing has gone wrong here. And I just want to like push back on the idea that that's true, because I don't think that that's true.
I don't think that that's true. I mean, I think I get the intention, because if we are talking about, there are times where, just as I was saying, somebody's stuff comes up and you stay with them, and it maybe is directed at you, so it looks like they're pushing back on you, or something minor's gone wrong and it's very big, and that's being, and then that's an opportunity for a person to heal, or for you to coach together, move through something, sure. But does everything that happened in a session automatically fall under that umbrella? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And what I guess I'm getting at is it is a way for some coaches to avoid the responsibility of the things that they have said or done mistakenly or on purpose in a session.
Ding, ding. Exactly. And I think that's exactly it. I think there are coaches out there that are avoiding this introspection, avoiding having to look at themselves. And so they're just going to keep, it's like, what's that? Everything that bounces off me and comes back to you, whatever, I am rubber and you are glue.
Well, it's like there's some universal truth that, that the things happen because they're supposed to happen. It happened because that's what happened. And sometimes when things happen, we can make meaning out of it, or we can take healing from it, or sure. But if somebody, and I think it's just coming up with that discernment. This is not like a universal magic wand where everything happens for a reason, so everything's okay and everything's wrapped up in a neat bow at the end. Like that's not the way it works. So I think that's a really great distinction to add here. It's not always going to be neat. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's emotional, and we don't want to shy away from that. But when those things are happening, all the more reason for us to be
absolutely in our integrity in that moment as much as we can. So if something does happen, you want to repair, listen, validate, admit, solve. Those are just kind of the 4 words I came up with. Let's see. I'm going to keep, it's about care, I think, and love. To me, this is all about how we express love, how we express care for our clients and for ourselves. So this is kind of, I don't know, I mean, we're over time here, but we can just quickly kind of go through this, is how do we create safety for ourselves in the communities that we're a part of? And so again, these were just off the top of my head, the things I came up with. Trust yourself. If it walks like bullshit and quacks like bullshit, it's bullshit. And if somebody else is telling you it's gold or it happened for a reason or whatever, and that's not washing, that's not resonating for you, that's BS. When there's a lot of it out there. And I think too, once people realize, I just think the biggest thing is people come into this world, it's easy to sort of fall in love with the brilliance of a coach or a leader, and they have what we want, and there's a lot there that takes us out of our own discernment. And so you always want to maintain your own discernment and trust it. And if you're not sure, get support, get a reality check. I would say, I mean, you can definitely talk to people in the community, but sometimes I find it's really, really clear if you talk with a trusted person outside the community, because they'll just be like, who is this person and what the hell are they doing? And that's crazy. Like, are you kidding me? And if you sit there and try to go like, oh, no, they do it because, and then Jen, I'm just going to use this, they say everything happens for a reason in this community. And they're like, that's nuts. Then there you go. You have your reality check. And I would encourage you to speak up, state your feedback factually, ask for what you want, for what should be happening. Chances are others are feeling similarly, although people may not always back you up. So you have to be ready to put yourself out there and not necessarily, and don't rely on other people standing behind you, because people get fearful. People want to fit in. People don't want to make waves. This brings up a lot of stuff for people. People want to avoid conflict, right? So
They'll actually gang up on you.
They'll gang up on you. I mean, I think several of us have had these things happen. So the other piece is sometimes maybe you don't want to speak up. Maybe you just want to leave, and that's okay too. I think the last bullet is really key to remember, that you're never stuck. Maybe you're out some dollars, but you are never stuck. You can leave a situation that's not working for you, and no amount of money is worth being in a situation that is not psychologically safe. It is just not worth it. Does anybody else have anything to add here? I mean, I think this could be a whole other call that we could talk about. Anything else to add here?
I think that everything happens for a reason is violence. There's
Yeah.
very few things in the coaching community that has created more harm than that statement.
Yeah. And it's so much more of a nuanced conversation. You can't just, because you do play out the patterns in your life, and things will come up, but you don't bring that on yourself. Things don't happen for a reason. It's more about the lens through which you're seeing what's happening in your life and the way that you're reacting to it, which is based on your patterns, your enculturation, all that stuff. But you're never bringing anything on yourself. Never, never, never. I was so scared of law of attraction forever, and that I would negatively manifest things to myself. I mean, just ridiculous.
Yeah,
I can't think bad thoughts because I'm going to negatively manifest for myself. Oh my God.
I think it's more in, like, we don't have to talk about all of this stuff like it's universal truth.
Yes.
Universal truth that everything happens for a reason. If I have a client that wants to play with, like, that feels comfortable with that, fine. But I think that's where things get so fucky, is there's all these little theories and there's ways that we make it, like, I think Jen's point, I know she's gone, but that's what we were taught. Your client always gets what you need. So, or what they need from a session. So I understand why that's taught. And it's all for the convenience of the coach to get out of their own head, stop trying to second guess what the client needs, etc. And it's not a freaking universal truth. And that's the sticking point is, and I think a lot of coaches stick to that as though it's true, when really it's just a mechanism for the coach.
I think another sort of theme underneath this is about more nuance, less easy pronouncements of the one true way that things are.
Less
you know?
aphorism spewing.
All right, y'all. I think we're at the end. So thank you all so much for joining and adding to this conversation and really helping me achieve my intention to just have this be something that people can watch, that we can send people to, that is just a great piece for people to learn or just to access and when they're feeling confused about something that they're experiencing. So thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.